Hi, class. Welcome to week 8, and we're starting our next book, which I'm really excited about because I feel like this book really breaks down the Yalom text and just kind of explains things in a more simplified way, which might be helpful for some of you. It's a little bit more just basic. And so I like it, especially because Yalom can seem kind of complex. I hope you're staying all safe out there with this weather that we've had. It's been kind of crazy. Maybe you got some snow on your mountains or in your backyard and you're not used to it, so I hope you're enjoying it. So we're talking more specifically about running group, maybe not so much about theory and practice behind group. And so we're looking at chapter 1 of our second textbook and just talking about the different kinds of groups. There's task groups, psychoeducational groups, counseling groups. Task groups aim to foster accomplished identified work goals. Psychoeducational group are, what we talk about potentially with parenting, anxiety, teaching someone, giving information on maybe areas of deficit. And then counseling groups aim at preventing and they have educational purposes as well. And so psychotherapy groups, they're more in-depth psychology, learning more about the specific problem, trying to gain specific maybe treatment modalities for that problem. Brief groups are more time limited, things of that nature. Maybe it's only 8 to 12 weeks. The advantages are it maybe meets the needs of the client. It's not too long. It can hold a lot of different client populations, can be used in different settings, different areas. Multicultural perspective on group, cultural, and we have a lot of articles on that this week too. Culture is learned in groups. It helps with group work. And similarities and differences can be addressed in group, which is really cool. Especially for people who aren't used to maybe getting outside their comfort zone or their box or meeting new people. Group is a way to do that. And this is the thing, a lot of mental health issues are not specific to one race or one socioeconomic status. Like grief affects everyone, mental illness affects everyone. And so for people just to see like people different than them, but like feel the very same ways as them, can be very healing, very cathartic, very eye-opening. So that is something positive about group for sure. And something for us to be mindful of in group as leaders, that like differences don't have to be a bad thing. We can embrace differences. And so the best kind of setting to operate in is to make sure that like the people who are leading a group, especially if it's a group that's based on something multicultural, is to know the group, know the dynamics, know maybe if like what it is about that culture that might be predominantly coming in, that might be most effective, what skills might be good, understanding the culture. Those are kinds of things. There might be some of you who would like to get into culturally skilled learning, so that you have maybe a specific population that you work with, or a specific cultural dynamic that feels comfortable for you. For example, like there's certain dynamics. For example, like some of my people I know work at like the Indian reservations, and when you're life on a reservation is very different than typical day-to-day life outside of a reservation. And so understanding those dynamics, understanding that culture, understanding their systems, and how it works, and how life on the res is different, is important. Because if you assume it's like everyday life out here, then you're going to assume wrong and probably create potential problems. And so understanding that dynamic, and for some of you, maybe you're familiar with that. And so that sounds like a population you'd really want to work with. For others of you, that would be a learning curve. And so it's all of us are capable of learning and growing and things of that nature. But it's something to be mindful of, because we don't want to be insulting to anyone or make assumptions about anybody. And so that's really, really, really important. Making sure that you understand your own racial and cultural identity. Be open about your racial biases if if you're facilitating and that's part of it, encourage discussion about feelings, pay more attention to the process than the content of the race talk, encourage and support people who are willing to take the risk of expressing themselves, even if it's hard or scary or worried of, being rejected. It's important for people to be open with how they're feeling, obviously in a respectful way, and to not be criticized for that. So something to be mindful of too in this process is to be mindful that you as a leader are a person, that you can identify with the client's pain. You're going to need to be able to make it through the end, making sure you're taking good care of yourself. You have good self-awareness, a sense of humor, inventive maybe at times, and a personal dedication to commitment. You as a group leader, unless there's like some tragedy or, really important reason why you can't finish, it'll be important to finish what you begin, especially with your clientele, because they would probably be pretty upset if you started this and then didn't finish it. You want to create a climate that fosters interpersonal norms, openness, directedness, concern for one another, leaders' interpersonal skills, making sure we seem genuine, empathy, warmth and significance, and creating a climate that leads to successful outcomes. A lot of that, like when you learn in professional practice, a lot of that very basic attending skills, right? Like that should be essential in all forms of therapy, not just individual therapy, family therapy, couples therapy, even in group therapy. We want to have a genuineness and authenticity, active listening, things of those nature. It's really important for not only the people attending your group, but for people to feel comfortable to open up. We talked about, for people to build that rapport with you, that trust. You need to be a person that they feel like they can trust, right? You need to learn your skills. Skills cannot be separated from the leader's personality. So it needs to be who you are. I always talk about this with students, is that whoever you are, you need to be that still as a therapist, just in a legal and ethical way. I don't want you to change your personality or change who you are just because you're a therapist. Like you feel like you have to be rigid and tight and know a lot of big words or something. You need to be a human, and you need to be yourself in that, because people are able to tell what's authentic and what's not authentic. In my office, I am who I am right now in this moment, because I don't know how to be anyone else than that, and I refuse to be anyone else than that. Take it or leave it. Like, it is what it is. And I think that's important, not in a disrespectful or rude way, and not to say I can't receive criticism or be willing to grow. Of course, like you want to have an attitude of growth, but like I'm going to be who I am as a person. Like I'm not going to change that for anybody, just to seem like I'm somebody I'm not. Because if that's the case, then I'm going to burn out, and I don't want that for any of you, whether you plan to do groups all the time or you plan just to see regular clients all the time. Burnout is really huge in helping professions, and you have to take care of yourself in order to avoid that. Okay. So, like I mentioned, active listening, reflecting, clarifying, all basic attending skills, facilitating. Now that's part of the group process, right? We're leading, we're taking kind of some level of charge, responsibility, and empathizing, interpreting, questioning, linking, confronting, all types of skills that you may need, supporting, blocking, assessing, modeling, suggesting, initiating, evaluating, terminating, all great things. There is also to the potential of having a co-leader, which we talked about before. I think it's beneficial to have a co-leader just because to have someone to bounce things off of you, to help you kind of with management of the group and some of the dynamics. The main things is you want to make sure that you and your co-leader are on the same page and that you'll work well together. So it decreases the chance of burnout if you have a partner, less overwhelming, especially if you're new. Co-leader peer supervision is beneficial. So maybe if you're new, maybe a more seasoned leader helps lead with you, and then you can return the favor in the future. I think that's really great model, and helps with like building your knowledge and having someone that's walked this path before you. The group can still meet if one of you isn't available to be there. Again, processing what's happening in the group. Where it becomes a problem is if the co-leader and you don't get along. There's some sort of competition between the two of you. And then if you don't meet regularly or things of that nature, it could be problematic. Okay. So again, group is there's a lot of dynamics to it. We've talked a lot about them. We talked about problematic people. Now we're going to get into the more specifics of how do I run a day-to-day group, which is going to be helpful for your capstone, things of that nature. I think you'll really enjoy this text. Way different than Yalom. Not that Yalem's bad. It's just like simpler, pretty clear, black and white. So I hope that's helpful to you. Week 8, and then I believe next week is your spring break. So yay, get some time off. Have a fabulous week and stay warm.